Good evening, everybody, and thank you for your patience waiting on us tonight for the Thursday, March 17th School Board Planning Meeting. If you could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mrs. Benko, could we have roll call, please?
Mr. Cook?
Here.
Mr. Deschaux?
Here.
Mr. DeLauder?
Here.
Mr. Eifert?
Here.
Mr. Emig? Mrs. Herman?
Here.
Mrs. Maley?
Here.
Mrs. Mefford?
Here.
Mr. Rawhauser?
Here.
Thank you very much. First area on our agenda is our communications period, our public comment. This is a 3-minute period. If anybody has anything they would like to say, please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the purposes of our records. Seeing no one, we'll move on to Board President's communication. We did just have an executive session prior to this meeting to gather information on the proposed early retirement incentive, which has been added to tonight's agenda under the Human and Fiscal Resources Report. There will be a vote tonight on that item, so that has been added. That is all I have for tonight, so we'll move on to our first committee report, which is Curriculum and Professional Development. Mr. DeLauder.
Okay. We met today. We actually had an opportunity to discuss several things. The one thing we did discuss was there are several independent study requests that have come from the high school, and then one early graduation. We have asked that they be put on the April agenda for approval on that. Next thing we talked about was the new ELA curriculum that we're looking at for the K through 8. Through discussion and talking, having input from teachers who have taken a look at 2 different programs we had. One was Journeys by Houghton Mifflin, and one was Ready Gen by Pearson. Again, some teachers in each school, as well as the intermediate school, had an opportunity to look at both programs, and the consensus from those teachers was that they would like to see the Journeys through Houghton Mifflin become part of our curriculum. Currently, with that, we do have Collections program, which is in the 7th and 8th grade building right now, and they started, I believe that was in January. They switched over to that. This is a more rigorous program, and it also is very aligned pretty well to Common Core standards. So we would like to also bring that, I believe we're going to bring that next month to the board for approval to bring that forth for next year. One of the concerns I did have was we had Mrs. Dietz, and she's not here, who is a teacher at Northeastern who currently uses this program. She couldn't say enough good things about the program, although she did say that it is a very rigorous program, and it's definitely going to be a change for our students and teachers. They have a lot of standardized tests, I should say assessments, excuse me, and a lot of them, and a lot of other material. So from a implementation standpoint, we would like to get this ordered by the end of the year so that our teachers will be able to have the materials for them once they leave the school year, for the end of the school year, so that they have the summer to look at it. We are also going to be providing, with Houghton Mifflin's help, some professional development days to get ready for those programs. Let's see here. And we did say that the Palmyra School District has implemented this, and they have seen a dramatic increase in their scores since implementing the program. I think that's it. Kathy, Ms. Herman, any other things that I may have missed on that?
To me, Mr. DeLauder, so it's good to me.
Ms. Jackson, anything you want to add to that? Okay. So again, we did agree to bring it forward and think it would be a good addition to our curriculum and hopefully have a nice comprehensive curriculum coming forth. Second thing we did, which has been a sore spot for me for the last year, we actually talked a little bit about our grading policy, and after a year's discussion, we have started to finally make some headway. This evening, we actually came up with a tentative program, and it looks like we may, as of tonight, be going to a percentage type grade from K to 12. We looked at the, really why are we, what's our purpose for presenting these grades to parents, and the thought and the consensus was that just it's easier for parents to understand percentages versus exceptional, improving, and all those other things that we've done, especially in the elementary school level. So like I said, this is subject to change, but as of tonight, we believe that we're going to go with the percentage from K to 12. We also had a large discussion on participation and homework, as being part of the grading policy. A lot of concerns about whether that is a fair way to, if that's fair to include those in your final grades. When really our idea here is asking our students how well they're doing in the curriculum. Does having participation grade and homework really give a true showing of what they are actually learning? And then we want the report cards to reflect what the students actually can and cannot do. And again, like I said, not whether or not they do the homework. And then our thoughts, forming some of this evaluation. And then another thought we had was, and I think we're going to look at this further, is our formative and summative evaluations, do we want to weigh them differently, giving them a percentage of that? And what we have asked Ms. Jackson and the staff to do is come up with, for next month, what do we want our assessments to look like, and what do we want to be on that grade level, or on the grades. I guess that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So that's going to be our homework for next month, and hopefully we will continue on that. But I'm very happy that since for over a year we've been dealing with this, and I think we're finally making some headway, and we'll be able to complete this probably within the next month or two. Again, Ms. Herman, anything on that? Okay. Ms. Jackson?
No.
Good. Oh, I didn't do that good. So, all right, that's all I have.
Board members have any questions for Mr. DeLauder or Mrs. Herman or Ms. Jackson? Okay.
Do we want to get into how much the proposal for the cost for the curriculum is going to be at this point? Or do we want to
We'll bring it up at the next board
In
meeting.
the next board
If
meeting?
you guys are recommending, we'll do that, and we'll give a brief overview.
Okay.
At the board meeting.
All right,
before
great.
we vote on it.
Okay, thank you. Yep, that's all I have. Thank
Okay,
you.
all right. We'll move on to facilities next. In Mr. Emmig's absence, I believe we'll have Mr. Rawhauser do that report.
Mr. Nelson's going to give a report. He's a little more familiar with what
Okay.
we're here to discuss this evening.
You're not going to say frustrated like Tuesday night?
Not frustrated, it's just I wasn't on the tour, and he wrote down certain comments and knows more how to answer the questions.
Good evening. We had a meeting tonight, a facilities committee, and we didn't have a whole lot to talk about that was on the previous agenda, so we took the opportunity to review our results from our tour on Saturday amongst the group. We reviewed what pretty much everybody said about the different buildings. A lot of different comments. A lot of them were kind of the same, but a lot of different comments. So at the end, the results of the question of which facility is in the best condition, out of 7 people that filled out the questionnaire, 7 agreed that Dover Elementary was probably the best, followed by Wagglestown and then North Salem, which pretty much I would agree with because of the age of the construction in the building. Which building is in the worst or poorest condition? 7 of them said the intermediate school, which is no surprise. followed, two people said Live was right next to intermediate school, and one person said the high school was an additional as bad, as like 1, 2, 3. So on the last question, based on your observations, would you support the Board of Directors with the capital improvement campaign to enhance our school facilities? We had 5 yeses, and we had 2 that really had a question more than a yes or a no. So that was just, we talked a little bit about each building and the different things, but pretty much it was fairly the same comments on all of them. So after we kind of got that done, we talked about, I brought up our D10 request, which I gave each one of the board members a copy tonight. It's in front of you on the table. And this is a culmination of things that either are asked for by the department chair, principal, maybe the athletic department, different people. It also is things that I have noticed over the years and think that we should look at or need to be done. So a lot of it is carried from year to year to year. So some of this stuff has been on there a while. So I'll let you kind of read over this at your leisure, and it'll certainly be something we want to talk about as far as what do we want to do this summer, because it's a lot of what we get done over the summer is the D10 projects. D10s are still coming in. I got 2 today, so they're still trickling in. And I try to put an estimate, and I want to stress that that is an estimate on there. That's in most cases not a firm quote, but it's an estimate, so it could be less or could be more than that. It's kind of hard to get a quote on something and then you wait 6 months to vote on it because they don't honor the quote anyway. So I'm just trying to figure out about what I think it's going to be, and we go from that point forward. So, but it's something we'll definitely need to talk about moving forward with Mr. Cherry and Jen and the school board and what have you.
Mr. Nelson, quick question on the
Sure.
D10s. Are these ranked in any way, like as
No.
most necessary,
No.
the least necessary?
They're
Can
just-
that be done maybe for us down the road?
We
or-
can, and if you notice in the very last column, there's a priority list, or priority column. I can certainly go through and give you my opinion, but I think it'd be wise maybe if, like, again, Jen and Mr. Cherry and I and principals, whatever, could go through here and put a priority on it
That'd be
based
very
on
helpful.
everybody, not just what I think, because what I think might not be what everybody else in the district thinks. So that was our discussion for this evening. One other thing that I'll report out on is we have 27 single windows to finish at the high school, and our window replacement project will be complete. So they've made incredible headway. We should be finished by the end of March, and it's going extremely well. So.
And the locker rooms are done at this.
And the locker rooms are finished also, yes. We finished those up 2 weeks ago. We put the additional lockers, new lockers in the senior high home side of the stadium locker rooms, and we put some additional ones in the junior high, or the away side, however you want to look at that. Any questions? Did I miss anything, Mr. DeLauder or Steve? Mr. Walker?
I do have a question on these projects that you've listed there. What kind of timetable would you need to do is there any certain projects there that you would need more time to prepare for, to get them done during the summer if that became an option?
Yeah, I need to know what we're going to do by May. May is kind of the drop dead date. If I don't know by then, a lot of times it's too late to get material ordered, or equipment, whatever it's going to be. So usually by the beginning of May, I need to know which way we're headed.
And I think certainly next month we can bring a prioritized list, or Mr. Nelson could bring one back to his committee that shows how they've been prioritized.
And by all means, I mean, you can take the list yourself and prioritize it also as what you think might be the most critical or not. I know we waited till June last year to approve the window project, and we didn't get started till January. It took that long to get the material. So, any questions? Okay.
Any other questions from board members? Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Next item on the agenda is the Human and Fiscal Resources Committee. Mrs. Mefford.
We had a very lengthy discussion this evening about the preliminary budget. A full presentation will be done for the board in April as we prepare for a preliminary budget to be posted, to be approved by June 30th. So without going into a whole lot of detail on that, know that more information is coming at our April board meeting. There will be a policy up for adoption by the board that deals with a conflict of interest that we will need to vote on at our next board meeting. This conflict of interest policy comes out of a recommendation by the UGG, the Uniform Grant Guidance Policies, which we should be adapting, and it deals with the way that federal money is spent and policies and procedures. And they took a look at our policies and procedures, and there are about 4 or 5 areas that we really need to update or add to be in compliance with that, so that we come out with a clean audit again at the end of the year. But the policy, just to give you a quick synopsis of it, it talks about a conflict of interest between employees and relationships and engaging in business with outside vendors. So it's very similar to the policy that we actually received our financial statements that we have to turn in, just so that people know what affiliation we have with businesses that are doing business with the district. It does follow PA code, so it's pretty standard. Most districts around the area are going to it. It is recommended by PSBA, and again, it is recommended by the auditors that we accept these. So we are, again, going to be looking, total there are about 15 policies, give or take, because we're looking at what's policy and what's procedure. So over the course of the next 3 to 4 months, we will be bringing forth more policy to review, just to make sure that we're fully in compliance with our financial reporting policies and procedures. Again, we spent the majority of our day today on the preliminary budget presentation and really kind of digging in deep and asking some questions as far as how calculations were derived at, but that will be available for the full board. Ms. Benko did a wonderful job getting that put together. So without getting too much into that, we will unveil that in April. And from a committee report, that is pretty much it, but I do have an item that we need to vote on.
Yes, as I had mentioned earlier, we have a motion that we're going to add to tonight's agenda to approve the early retirement incentive for professional employees.
Prior to that, are there any questions on the committee report? No? Okay, then we'll move along. I'd make the motion to approve a memorandum of understanding with the Dover Area Education Association for an early retirement incentive option for eligible professional employees for the 2015-2016 fiscal year, waiving the February 1st notification deadline contingent on counter acceptance by the Dover Area Education Association, and also to offer an incentive to eligible administrative employees.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Questions or discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a vote. Mrs. Benko. With 8 yeses, motion carries. Thank you, Mrs. Mefford. Next report is our Safe and Supportive Schools Committee. Mr. Cook.
The committee met this evening. We had a number of items on our agenda. First of all, Policy 822, which, if you may recall, last month we had talked about bringing that to the full board for approval pending CGA language acceptance and tweaking. There actually was some changes made by CGA, which we felt we should probably bring back to the committee and discuss it a little bit more in detail before we bring it to the full board. So the general synopsis of what CGA had asked us to include pertain to the definition of a core team. I'll back up. Policy 822 is related to the automated external defibrillator, who can use it, how it's being used and implemented, and that sort of thing. So the definition of the core team, CGA felt that we needed to have a little bit more of a definition there. So their language will give a somewhat broad definition, not specific to procedural personnel and that sort of thing. So that was one thing we wanted to talk about before we brought it to the full board. The second thing that was different than what we had submitted, they've actually added or suggested that we add some training protocol there, in that there's some mandates suggested that we provide training for continued CPR certifications at least once every 3 years. That currently wasn't part of the policy as it was submitted to them. They suggested that we do have that as part of the policy. So in discussion in our committee, we agreed that it would be a good thing to have that into our policy. There's a lot of personnel that do require or do need that to happen on a routine basis like that. So next month you'll have that coming before you for full board approval. Secondly, let's see here. Policy, we talked about the background checks, and if you can recall, quite a while back, we started talking about background checks and clearances and needing to update our policies because of the change of the laws last year with new acts coming into play and volunteers and all that, and it was in the process of changing a lot. We think we've gotten a little bit more continuity now to what's going on, and with the Board Docs program, it's put us in a position where we could look at all of our policies as a whole. And we had asked CGA for some advice on some generic language there that we could update our policies with, so that in the event that the law changes once again, we won't have to go back and redo this process every time the law changes. So CGA did offer some advice on that, and there is about 13 policies in play regarding employees, volunteers, teachers, student teachers, you name it, anything that has a background check with it, there's a policy for it. So all but about 2 of the policies are pretty cut and dried. There is a little bit of information we want to get clarified yet on the volunteers, and one other policy involving student teachers and interns there. We want to get a little further clarification, but it's our expectation that we'll be able to also bring this package to you next month for full board approval with the language changes, barring any unforeseen hang-ups with that. So that'll be, you talk about talking about things for a while, Chuck. That one has been talked about and talked about and talked about. So we'll be happy to get that one off our plate. We did talk a little bit about policy 203.1. That is the policy that is related to, I think we call it healthful school environment. PSBA offers a policy that is limited to HIV. Some other school districts broaden it a little bit further into more of like a universal precautions type of policy. And the committee kind of felt like we need to take some time and delve into this a little bit deeper and possibly broaden what our current policy is, and even the HIV policy, into a little bit more involvement in that. So we're intending to bring that back next month and talk some more about it in our committee. Had a very brief discussion. Deb had shared with us the need for a new van. One of the vans is currently on its last leg, and probably from a safe and supportive standpoint isn't very safe anymore. So she is working with a CoStarz vendor right now, getting the possibility of getting a new van, and her and Mr. Cherry have been talking about including this into next year's budget process. So that is ongoing. Those discussions are ongoing as we speak. So final item on our agenda was a school intruder drill. Unfortunately, I don't have anything to report on that. Have not made contact yet with Chief Bensel to get the ball rolling on that one. Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Cook? Okay. We'll move on to technology. Mr. Deschaux.
Okay, our committee, we were looking at board docs and looking into a possible, making a policy for data breach. Currently, there are 2 main policies used in the state for data breach. The two main ones would be for the Red Lion Area School District, their policy 830 breach, and then Cumberland Valley is the different data breach. The four main items that we have that sum up the differences between them are some have a act in there dealing with health records. Our question would be, is health records for students stored on Skyward? Is it all done on computer to where somebody could get into it and get it, or is it all paper? Is one of our questions. So we would have to see if we would want to adopt some type of act protecting our health records for that. The other would be if we want acts in our policy. Red Lions and half of the state don't have any references to the acts in there. Some do, and my concern would be we would have to stay on top of the 3 acts that were in there to make sure that we were current and not obsolete. The other point we were wondering is who would it pertain to for the data breach? Who would we hold responsible for it? Some of them have everybody. Some go into greater detail with, do we hold vendors who work on our systems? Do we have somebody watching them? Do we have somebody signing information if they're going into our system and actually taking our data? Then, let's see. Some of them have that you're held responsible for a data breach if you're at school working on it, but not at home. And then others have it to where, yep, you're in data breach if you are working at home. So that would be something we'd want to look into. And we have a side note that we would not necessarily want to put in the policy, but we want to make note that if there's a program that we have that is telling our students to assist them in knowing the importance of how to protect sensitive, confidential, personal data information on themselves. With all of the calls going out, people are trying to get information, your social security numbers. Is there something we're teaching them at an age to protect themselves? So those are the main issues for us right now. We're still going through to see how we want to bring it to the board for a policy. Because currently we do not have one that we've noticed for a data breach. Any questions?
No questions for Mr. Deschaux. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the superintendent's report. Mr. Cherry.
I have 2 items. First of all, the one item I forgot to mention during the facilities, I just wanted to reiterate that while the group is taking a look at the results from the surveys and from the visits, just to reiterate the point that I know back in October there was a presentation on district configuration and so forth. So I just want to reiterate the point that there's no reconfiguration going on in the Dover area school district. So just please dispel that rumor. It's still out there that next year buildings are going to be K1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I just want to once again publicly say and have it recorded that there is no reconfiguration going to happen next year at this time. The second one is more of a celebration. Today I had the opportunity to work with central administration as well as principals on kind of our kickoff to our shared mission kind of quest to come up with. I know one of the things that the board has urged me to do is to kind of think about is our current mission the mission for the future and where we're going. So we had the opportunity for about an hour and a half this morning to go through an activity. We came up with some samples over there. I'm happy to say that the show will go on the road. I'll be working with a group of intermediate school students, a group of high school students. We have a group of parents that are going to be scheduled, and then we're going to do some invitations out to professional staff as well as support staff to participate in the activities. So one of the things I'm hoping to do is towards the close of school and where I think that the board might be doing a retreat over the summers to have some samples for you all to review and to take a look at and to kind of prioritize your thoughts so that we can kick off next year with an updated and/or new shared mission for the school district. So those are my 2 updates from Tuesday.
Any questions for Mr. Cherry? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to miscellaneous. Any board members have anything else they'd like to add tonight?
Yeah, I have two things I'd like to say. The one item that came to mind when you were speaking, Mr. Deschaux, about the technology. I have a question, principals, Devon, and somebody. Every year, the kids sign that, what was it called, technology usage? So do we have anything, like, that was, I don't know about high school, but in elementary, that was basically for the kids just going into the lab and using the computers in the lab or the laptops in the room. Is there anything now, do they have like a bigger deal to sign now that they have this one?
Yeah, when we do the checkout with them, even this summer when we did the distribution at the intermediate school, there's quite a few forms that all the families have to sign off on, from insurance acceptable use to the actual handbook that actually goes through a number of different scenarios in which they have to utilize the technology. So we do require lots of signatures. What we actually did in order to create them is we actually looked at neighboring districts, kind of what they utilized. We actually collected information from Apple themselves, and then we compiled our own. So I can have Brad send you a sample of that so you can actually see what the students and the parents sign off on at the time that they pick up the device. And they do that every year, so it's not a one and done. When they pick up the device every year, they'll sign again.
Okay, so we're pretty covered as
Yeah,
far
we
as
keep
when they
everything on
sign
file,
that.
from the insurance to the use of it to the actual handbook itself. So they sign off on all three areas.
Okay, and the other thing was, I went to the Spring Legal Roundup on Tuesday. Am I right? Yes, Tuesday. And there are a lot of really interesting court cases from Pennsylvania, anywhere from transgender use of bathrooms to food allergies to transportation. So I don't know, do you want me to just hold on to this, and if anybody wants any copies or anything, or would you like to take possession and?
And I can have Amy scan it and then send it out to the board.
Okay, great, because it was really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all.
Anybody else?
I have a question regarding the D10 projects. I know they're related to facilities. One of the things that became apparent walking through, which was a little bit of a surprise to me, was how outdated some of our computer labs are at the elementary school. Is that something that could figure into our big plan here? I mean, we're moving in a technology direction with the one-to-ones. It just seems like I was really surprised at the old monitors and the XP systems. Is there something maybe we should look at to maybe update some of those?
And that was one of the agreements that the elementary principals and I walked into this year, as we kind of push one-to-one into 6th grade to 5th grade, and not to circumvent the budget presentation for next month, but it'll actually be pushed into 4th grade next year as well. With the Chromebooks and other items that they have, we decided to kind of leave the computer labs as is, so to speak, with the idea that we wouldn't replace them. We know that they're archaic, but like I said, as we push one-to-one more into the school, we do actually see, probably in the near future, the need not to have those labs like they are right now, because students will all be able to have those devices in the classrooms. As I said, I think on Tuesday, one of the things that we're going to be experimenting with at Live Elementary in one of our kindergarten classrooms is actually how to utilize technology in a more broad avenue. So we're going to be kind of configuring that classroom with some short throws that are walls as well as the floor interactive. We're going to be ordering 30 iPads for the students and also for the teachers. So we're trying to figure out those types of capacities. We were able to take some of the technology that we had at the IS, though, and also push it down into the elementaries too. So yeah, the computer labs are ugly, and the principals will all tell you it takes good 15, 20 minutes to get them up and booted, and sometimes probably a tap on the back to make sure that they turn on. But they're really kind of last case scenario backups, because there are other things for them actually to utilize. So they will all eventually get some type of replacement or enhancement, but the kids still do have access to technology other than just the lab itself. Yep.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on to our second public comment period. This is a 2-minute period. If you are interested in making any remarks, please come to the microphone and state your name and address. Okay, seeing no one, it is time to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Yes. Opposed, no. Motion carries. We are adjourned. We do have an executive session right after our meeting tonight for the board, so please come back to the boardroom.